The glass slipped from my hand and shattered against the marble floor the exact moment my father said, "You're no longer part of this family." For a second I actually smiled. "That's not funny," I said, looking around, expecting someone, anyone, to laugh with me. No one did. The music in the background suddenly felt distant, like it didn't belong to this moment anymore. "Dad, what are you talking about?" I asked, my voice tightening. He didn't even look at me properly. "I'm talking about the fact that everything you think you own isn't yours anymore." I laughed again, but this time it sounded wrong, hollow. "Come on, stop it. Tonight is my engagement. Don't ruin it with jokes." My brother stood a few steps behind him, arms crossed, eyes down. "Ryan, say something." I pushed, but he just muttered, "It's done, Jason." That word hit harder than anything else. Done. Like I was already erased. I turned to my mother, desperate. "Mom, you're just going to stand there?" She avoided my gaze completely. "It's for the best," she said quietly. "For who?" I snapped. "For me? Or for all of you?" My chest tightened as I looked at Olivia. She was supposed to be the one person on my side. "Say something," I told her, stepping closer. She took a step back instead. That one step felt like a knife. "Jason." "I didn't know how to tell you," she said softly. "Tell me what?" My voice rose. "That you were part of this?" She didn't answer, and that silence confirmed everything. I shook my head, laughing under my breath. No, this doesn't make sense. I built everything. I worked day and night. You all just, what? Took it?" My father finally met my eyes, cold and steady. "You built it, yes. But you signed it away. You just didn't read what you signed." My mind froze. "What are you talking about?" I demanded. He gestured to a file on the table. "Those partnership agreements. Those expansions. You trusted me, remember?" I stared at him, realization creeping in slowly, painfully. "You tricked me." He didn't deny it. "I guided you." I picked up the file with shaking hands, flipping through pages I barely remembered signing. "This is illegal," I said, but even I could hear the weakness in my voice. "Is it?" he replied calmly. "Everything is perfectly documented." I looked at Ryan again. "You knew." He finally looked up, guilt flickering for a second before it disappeared. "I had no choice," he said. "There's always a choice," I shot back. "You just chose yourself." My grip tightened on the papers. "And you?" I turned to Olivia. "What did you choose?" She swallowed. "Security," she whispered. I stared at her, disbelief turning into something colder. "So all those nights, all those promises, that was just an act?" She shook her head quickly. "No, it wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" I cut her off. "Explain it to me. Make it make sense." She couldn't. None of them could. Because there was no explanation that could fix this. I felt something inside me crack, something deep and final. "You used me," I said quietly. No one argued. That silence was louder than anything. I looked around the room at the people who clapped for me just minutes ago, now whispering like I was some kind of joke. "So what now?" I asked, my voice steady in a way I didn't expect. My father adjusted his cufflinks. "Now you leave." Just like that. No emotion. No hesitation. I let out a slow breath, nodding slightly. "You know what's funny?" I said, glancing at each of them. "I would have given everything to you, without all this." My mother's lips trembled, but she still said nothing. I placed the file back on the table carefully. "You didn't have to betray me," I added. My father shrugged. "This was more efficient." I almost smiled. Almost. Then I looked at Olivia one last time. "You could have told me," I said. She looked like she wanted to say something, but it was too late. Everything was too late. I turned toward the door, each step heavier than the last, but I didn't stop. Behind me, the music slowly came back like nothing had happened. But everything had. The moment I stepped outside into the cold night air, I felt it clearly. Something inside me had died in that room. The man who trusted blindly, who believed in family, in love, he was gone. I clenched my fist, staring into the darkness ahead. "You took everything from me," I whispered under my breath. Then I took a slow breath and said, "Now watch me take it all back." The cold night air hit my face the moment I stepped outside, but I didn't stop walking. "So this is it?" I muttered under my breath, my hands clenched. "This is how it ends?" My phone buzzed in my pocket, and for a second I thought maybe someone had realized what they'd done. I pulled it out quickly. Nothing. Just a useless notification. I laughed bitterly. Of course. I dialed Marcus. The call rang once, twice, then went silent. "Pick up," I said, pacing on the empty street. Marcus, pick up the damn phone. The line disconnected. I stared at the screen. Even you? I whispered. I called again. No answer. I let my hand drop slowly. All right, I said quietly. Message received. I looked back at the mansion one last time, lights glowing like nothing had happened. You all made your choice, I said, turning away. Now I'll make mine. The motel room smelled like dust and cheap cleaner, but I didn't care. I dropped onto the bed, staring at the cracked ceiling. How did I miss it? I asked myself. How did Jason Carter, who built everything from nothing, get played like this? I let out a slow breath. Because Jason Carter trusted them, I answered my own question. My phone sat beside me silent. Marcus should have called back by now, I muttered. Unless, he knew too. The thought made my chest tighten. I grabbed the phone again and sent a message. Did you know? The typing bubble appeared for a second, then disappeared. No reply. I laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. That says everything. I sat up, running my hands through my hair. Think, I told myself. Stop feeling, start thinking. I closed my eyes, replaying everything. Meetings, contracts, conversations. There were signs, I whispered. I just ignored them. The next morning, I sat at a small table with scattered papers, documents I had managed to access online. Let's see what you did, I said, scrolling through files. My fingers paused when I saw familiar signatures. Mine. No, I leaned closer. That can't be right. I opened another file. Dates. Transfers. Ownership changes. Everything was there. You didn't just take it overnight, I said slowly. You planned this. My jaw tightened. For months. I grabbed another document, scanning quickly. And Olivia? I stopped, staring at her name. You were involved from the start? My chest felt heavy, but my voice stayed steady. So every smile, every promise, I shook my head. All fake. I pushed the chair back, standing abruptly. No, I said firmly. Not fake. Calculated. I picked up the phone again and called her. It rang, then went to voicemail. Of course it did, I muttered. I tried again. Same result. You don't get to stay silent, I said through clenched teeth. Not after this. I spent hours going through everything, connecting pieces I should have seen before. You signed this, Jason, I mocked myself quietly. You trusted them without reading. I slammed the file shut. No more of that. My reflection in the small mirror looked unfamiliar, tired, hollow, but something else too. This is what you turned me into, I said softly. Are you happy now? My phone buzzed again. A message from Marcus finally appeared. I didn't know everything. I stared at it, then typed back, but you knew enough. The reply came slower this time. I'm sorry. I shook my head. Sorry doesn't fix this, I said out loud. I didn't send anything else. I dropped the phone on the table and leaned back. The silence in the room felt different now. Not empty. Focused. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the dull street below. Crying won't bring anything back, I said quietly. Begging won't change what they did. I clenched my fists, feeling the anger settle deep inside me, not wild, not out of control, cold. Good, I whispered. Stay like this. I took a slow breath. No more trust. No more blind loyalty. I looked at my reflection again. From now on, everything is calculated. My voice was calm, steady. You took everything from me, I said, remembering each face, each betrayal. My father, my brother, Olivia. I paused. All of you. I straightened my posture, my eyes sharpening. Now it's my turn. I picked up the documents again, holding them firmly. You built your plan over months, I said quietly. I'll destroy it piece by piece. A faint smile touched my lips, but there was no warmth in it. You thought Jason Carter was finished, I added. But this is just the beginning. I turned off the light, the room falling into darkness, but my mind was clearer than ever. They took everything, I whispered into the silence. Then I opened my eyes, steady and focused. Now I take it back. I was sitting in a quiet cafe, staring at a cold cup of coffee I hadn't touched, when a voice broke through the noise in my head. You're thinking too loud. I looked up, slightly irritated. Excuse me? The woman standing there didn't look away. That kind of stare, she said calmly, it's either regret or revenge. I let out a dry laugh. You read strangers for fun? She pulled the chair across from me and sat down like she belonged there. Only the interesting ones. I studied her for a moment. And what do you think I am? She tilted her head slightly. Someone who lost everything, but not someone who's finished. That hit deeper than I expected. I looked away, gripping the edge of the table. You don't know anything about me, I said quietly. I don't need to, she replied. People who are truly broken don't sit like that. You're not broken, you're holding it in. I exhaled slowly. And what if I am? She leaned back unfazed. Then stop wasting time sitting here. I didn't even realize how much that conversation stuck with me until I found myself replaying her words later that night. Not finished, I muttered, staring at my reflection. Is that what this is? I clenched my jaw. No, this isn't the end. The next morning I made a decision. If they use the system against me, I said, grabbing my phone, then I'll master the system. I contacted Ethan Cole. The call connected after a few rings. Ethan Cole speaking. I need your help, I said directly. Depends, he replied calmly. Are you looking for advice or results? I didn't hesitate. Results. There was a brief pause. Good answer, he said. Tell me what you have. I explained everything, contracts, transfers, signatures. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he said, You trusted the wrong people. I let out a quiet breath. I know that. No, he corrected, you trusted without verifying. That's different. I stayed silent. Send me everything, he continued. If there's a way to break this legally, I'll find it. And if there isn't? I asked. His tone didn't change. Then we create one. Days passed and I buried myself in work I should have done before. Look at this clause, Ethan pointed out during one of our meetings. Hidden but not invisible. I leaned closer. So they buried it deep enough that I wouldn't notice. Exactly, he replied. But not deep enough to make it untouchable. I nodded slowly. Good. That means they're not perfect. I started reviewing every deal I had ever signed. You missed this too, Ethan added. I shook my head. I didn't miss it. I ignored it. He gave me a brief look. That won't happen again. No, I said firmly. It won't. Later that evening, I sat alone again, documents spread across the table, connecting patterns. This wasn't random, I whispered. This was planned. My eyes stopped on a name I hadn't focused on before. Victor Hale. I leaned back slightly. Who are you? I pulled up more information, scanning quickly. Deals. Connections. Influence. You're everywhere, I muttered. The realization hit slowly but clearly. My father didn't have the reach for this, I said. Not alone. My grip tightened. So you're the one behind it. I stared at the mirror again that night, but this time I didn't see confusion. I saw clarity. This wasn't just betrayal, I said quietly. This was a setup. My reflection looked different, sharper, colder. You picked the wrong target, I added under my breath. My phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. Victor Hale is not someone you confront directly. I typed back, I'm not planning to confront. He replied almost instantly. Good. Because people like Victor Hale don't lose in obvious ways. I stared at the screen for a moment. Then I won't be obvious, I said quietly. I placed the phone down and looked at myself again. No more mistakes, I said. No more trust. I straightened slightly, my voice steady. This isn't about getting back what was mine anymore. My eyes didn't waver. This is about taking everything they built on my back and watching it fall. I paused, letting the silence settle around me. Then I spoke again, softer but sharper. This time, I clenched my fists, feeling that cold focus settle deep inside me. I don't lose. I didn't announce my return. I didn't post anything, didn't confront anyone, didn't even let my name come up in their world. Quiet moves, I muttered to myself, adjusting my watch as I stood outside a tall glass building. That's how this starts. I walked inside and gave my name at the front desk. The receptionist glanced at me, then made a call. Mr. Grant will see you, she said. I nodded once and took the elevator up. When the doors opened, Lucas Grant was already standing there, like he had been waiting. He studied me for a few seconds before speaking. You look different, he said. I smirked slightly. That's what losing everything does. He gestured toward his office. Come in. I stepped inside, calm, controlled. I won't waste time, I said. Work with me, and I'll give you something bigger than what you missed before. He leaned back, watching me closely. Bold, he said. Your father came to me once. I said no. I know, I replied. That's why I'm here. He raised an eyebrow. Convince me. I met his gaze without hesitation. He offered control. I'm offering growth. He smiled faintly. You've changed. I didn't blink. I had to. Lucas didn't agree immediately, and I respected that. If I say yes, he said slowly, I want numbers, structure, and proof you're not just chasing revenge. I leaned forward slightly. Revenge fades, I said. Control stays. He tapped his fingers on the desk. Good answer. I slid a file toward him. This is the market gap they're ignoring. This is where we enter. He opened it, scanning quickly. You prepared this already? I don't make moves without preparation, I replied. He looked up, eyes sharper now. And funding? I didn't hesitate. I start small. Quiet investments. Hidden shares. He nodded once. You're not planning to hit them head on. No, I said calmly. I'm planning to surround them. A slow smile formed on his face. I like that. He closed the file and stood up. All right, he said. Let's see how far you can go. I stood as well, extending my hand. Far enough, I said, to make them regret everything. He shook my hand firmly. Then let's begin. The next few days blurred into focused work. This clause gives us leverage, Ethan said over a call. I paced slowly in my room. How long before we can use it? Not yet, he replied. We build pressure first. I nodded. Good. Keep digging. I ended the call and looked at the screen in front of me, charts, numbers, patterns. Piece by piece, I whispered. I started buying small shares under different names, different accounts. Nothing big enough to attract attention. Stay invisible, I reminded myself. Lucas called later that evening. Your approach is working, he said. They haven't noticed anything. I allowed myself a small breath. They won't, I replied. Not until it's too late. He chuckled lightly. You're more patient than I expected. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling for a second. Patience is all I have left, I said. And it's enough. I ended the call and returned to the documents. Every number mattered. Every move had to be exact. There was no room for mistakes anymore. My phone rang late at night. I glanced at the screen and froze for a second. Marcus. I let it ring once more before answering. Took you long enough, I said, my voice calm. There was a pause on the other end. Jason. I didn't know, he said, his voice low. I leaned back in my chair. You didn't know what? I asked. Not everything, he replied quickly. I swear. I let the silence stretch. But you knew something, I said. He didn't deny it. I thought it was just business, he said. I didn't think they'd erase me? I cut in. Yeah. I figured that part out. He exhaled heavily. I'm sorry. I closed my eyes for a moment, then opened them again. Sorry doesn't help me, I said. Then let me fix it, he said quickly. I can tell you things. What they're doing. Who they're meeting. I didn't answer immediately. Information was valuable. Trust wasn't. Why would you do that? I asked. Because I messed up, he said. And because they're not as stable as they look right now. That caught my attention. Explain, I said quietly. He hesitated, then spoke. Deals are slipping. Pressure is building. They're hiding it, but it's there. I leaned forward slightly. Good, I said under my breath. Very good. Marcus continued, let me help. I paused for a second, then said, you talk. I decide what to believe. Fair, he replied. After the call ended, I placed my phone down slowly. Everything is lining up, I said to myself. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. No noise, I whispered. No warnings. My reflection in the glass looked steady, focused. They think I disappeared, I added. That's their biggest mistake. I picked up the file again, flipping through the pages with calm precision. You built your empire on me, I said quietly, thinking of every face that night. Now I'll take it back, piece by piece. I allowed a small, controlled smile to form. Not warm. Not emotional. Just certain. You won't see me coming, I said softly. I straightened my posture, feeling that cold clarity settle deeper inside me. And by the time you do, I paused, my eyes narrowing slightly. It'll already be over. Something's wrong, I said quietly, watching the numbers shift on my screen. They're slowing down. Lucas leaned against the desk, arms crossed. You're sure? I nodded. Deals delayed, investments hesitating, pressure is building. He exhaled slowly. You're already hitting them? I shook my head. Not directly. I tapped the screen. Just small moves. Enough to make them uncomfortable. My phone buzzed. Marcus. I answered without hesitation. Talk. His voice came quick. There's a meeting tomorrow. Big investors. They're trying to secure a major deal. I leaned back slightly. Location. Downtown conference hall, he replied. They need this one badly. A faint smile touched my lips. Good. Marcus hesitated. What are you planning? I didn't answer directly. Just keep talking, I said. That's all you need to do. I ended the call and looked at Lucas. This is the one, I said calmly. He raised an eyebrow. You're going after their biggest deal? I met his gaze. I'm not going after it, I said. I'm removing it. The next day I stood across the street from the building watching people walk in. Timing is everything, I murmured. My phone was already in my hand. One message sent to the right person. One document forwarded. That was all it took. Minutes later I saw the shift. Investors stepping aside, checking phones, whispering. There it is, I said under my breath. Lucas, standing beside me, let out a low breath. That fast. I nodded once. Information spreads faster than loyalty. My phone buzzed again. Marcus. What did you do? He asked, his voice tense. I kept my tone calm. Nothing they can prove. He exhaled sharply. The deal is collapsing. People are pulling out. I glanced at the building. As expected. Marcus lowered his voice. They're panicking. I allowed myself a small pause. They should be. I ended the call and slipped the phone into my pocket. Lucas looked at me impressed. You didn't even step inside. I turned slightly. I didn't need to. He nodded slowly. You're not just playing the game, he said. You're controlling it. I didn't respond. I was already thinking about the next move. The cracks didn't stop there. They spread. Slowly. Quietly. Another delay, Marcus reported later that night. They lost 2 more investors. I leaned against the window looking out at the city lights. Pressure builds, I said softly. And people break. He hesitated. Your father is getting aggressive. Ryan messed up a presentation today. I almost smiled. Of course he did. Marcus continued. And Olivia, she's trying to keep things together. My eyes narrowed slightly. Trying, I repeated. Not succeeding. I ended the call and stood there for a moment, letting the silence settle. Step by step, I whispered. No rush. A few days later, I walked into a quiet lounge, knowing exactly who would be there. Olivia stood near the window, speaking to someone, but the moment her eyes landed on me, everything stopped. Her expression changed instantly. Jason, how are you? I raised a hand slightly, cutting her off. Did you miss me? I asked, my voice calm, almost casual. She stared at me, searching my face like she didn't recognize what she was seeing. You're not supposed to be here, she said quietly. I tilted my head slightly. And yet, here I am. She stepped closer, her voice lowering. What are you doing? I didn't answer immediately. I just looked at her, letting the silence stretch. Working, I said finally. Her eyes flickered. You're behind this, aren't you? I smiled faintly. Not wide. Not warm. Just enough. Behind what? I asked. She shook her head slightly. The deals, the investors, everything falling apart. I leaned in just a little. You tell me, I said softly. Her breathing changed just slightly. Jason, this isn't a game, she said. You'll destroy everything. I straightened, my expression calm. Everything? I repeated. You mean what you took from me? She flinched. That small reaction told me more than words ever could. I didn't come here to argue, I added. I just wanted to see something. She frowned. See what? I met her eyes directly. If you'd say anything different this time. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Silence. Again. I nodded slowly. Thought so. I turned slightly, ready to leave. Jason, she called softly. I paused but didn't look back. I regret it, she said. I let out a quiet breath. You regret losing control, I replied. Not what you did. I walked away without waiting for an answer. As I stepped outside, the cool air hit my face again, but this time it felt different. Lighter. Clear. My phone buzzed once more. Marcus. They're trying to recover, he said quickly. Emergency meetings. New offers. I walked down the street, my pace steady. Let them try, I said. It won't be enough. He hesitated. Jason, how far are you going to take this? I stopped for a second, looking ahead at the empty road. As far as I need to, I replied calmly. They built their empire on me, I continued. Now I'm taking it apart. I ended the call and slipped the phone away. A faint smile touched my lips, but there was no warmth in it. Only certainty. You wanted everything, I whispered under my breath. Now watch it fall. I lifted my gaze, my eyes steady, focused. This is just the beginning, I said quietly. The shift didn't come slowly. It hit them all at once. You made this public? I asked, watching the screen as Lucas's announcement spread across every platform. His voice came through the call, calm and steady. I told you if I'm in, I'm fully in. I let out a quiet breath. Good, I said. They won't be able to hide now. Within hours, everything started moving. Investors questioned ownership. Old agreements were dragged into the light. My phone buzzed again. Ethan. We found something, he said without greeting. How big? I asked. Big enough, he replied. Hidden clauses, layered agreements, your father buried them deep but not deep enough. I leaned back slightly. Can you expose it? Already preparing, he said. Once this goes out, control won't be clear anymore. I smiled faintly. That's exactly what I need. He paused for a moment. Jason, this will shake everything. I didn't hesitate. That's the point. I ended the call and looked at the city outside. Let it break, I whispered. Let all of it break. I didn't have to wait long. The call came sooner than expected. You think you can take this from me? My father's voice came through, sharp and controlled, but I could hear the tension underneath. I stood still, letting the silence stretch for a second before replying. It was never yours, I said calmly. There was a pause. Then, you ungrateful, I cut him off. Careful, I said quietly. You don't have the same power anymore. His breathing changed just slightly. You're making a mistake, he said. I let out a soft laugh. No, I replied. I made my mistake when I trusted you. Another pause. Longer this time. We can still fix this, he added, his tone shifting. That almost made me smile. Fix. I repeated. You mean go back to pretending everything belongs to you? He didn't answer. I stepped closer to the window, my reflection staring back at me. It's already slipping, I said. You can feel it, can't you? He didn't deny it. That silence told me everything. This isn't over, he said finally. No, I agreed. It's just starting. I ended the call before he could say anything else. Ryan tried to call me next. I answered curious. Jason, listen. His voice came out fast, forced confidence barely covering the panic. Save it, I said. You had your chance. It's not like that, he insisted. Things are complicated right now. I shook my head slightly even though he couldn't see it. They're always complicated when you lose control, I replied. He exhaled sharply. You're going too far. I let out a quiet breath. Too far? I said. You watched everything happen, and now you think I'm the problem? He didn't respond immediately. We can still work something out, he said finally. I almost laughed. Work something out? I repeated. You mean give me back what you took and call it even? Silence. Again. I leaned forward slightly. You don't even believe what you're saying, I added. His voice dropped. You've changed. I didn't deny it. I had to, I said simply. I ended the call without another word. Olivia didn't call. She showed up. I saw her standing near the entrance of my office, waiting like she wasn't sure if she belonged there anymore. I stepped toward her slowly. You found your way in, I said. She looked at me, her expression softer than I remembered. We need to talk, she said quietly. I tilted my head slightly. About what? She hesitated. About fixing this. I let out a short laugh. Fixing? I said. You mean fixing what you broke? She stepped closer. It doesn't have to end like this. I met her eyes, steady and unreadable. It already did, I replied. She swallowed, her voice dropping. Jason. I didn't think it would go this far. I didn't react. That's the problem, I said. You didn't think. She looked away for a moment, then back at me. We can still stop this, she said. I shook my head slowly. No, I replied. You can't stop something you don't control anymore. That hit her. I could see it. You're not the same, she whispered. I held her gaze. You made sure of that. She had nothing left to say. This time her silence didn't hurt. It confirmed everything. By the time Victor Hale finally stepped in, the ground was already unstable beneath them. I didn't meet him first. He chose the place, the time. So you're the one causing all this noise? He said the moment I walked in. His voice was calm, measured, but his eyes were sharp. I took a seat across from him without hesitation. Noise, I said. I prefer results. He studied me for a moment. You're more confident than I expected. I leaned back slightly. You underestimated me, I replied. He didn't deny it. Perhaps, he said. But people like you don't last long in this kind of game. I smiled faintly. Then it's a good thing I'm not playing your game, I said. His gaze narrowed slightly. Then what are you doing? I met his eyes directly. Changing it. The silence between us felt heavier than anything before. He leaned forward just slightly. You think you can win against me? I didn't blink. I think you're not used to losing, I said. He let out a quiet breath, almost amused. Careful, he warned. I stood up slowly. You should be, I replied. I walked away without looking back, my steps steady, my mind clear. The real fight had finally begun. Let's not waste time, Victor said, folding his hands calmly across the table. I watched him for a second, then placed the file in front of him without a word. You should open that, I said. He didn't move immediately. And if I don't? He asked, voice steady. I leaned back slightly. Then I start sending copies. That was enough. He picked it up and flipped it open. His eyes moved quickly at first, then slower. More careful. Where did you get this? He asked quietly. I didn't answer. You recognize it, I said instead. He closed the file halfway, his expression still controlled but not as calm as before. These are allegations, he replied. I let out a small breath. No, I said. These are records. I leaned forward slightly. Manipulated contracts. Layered ownership. Fraud disguised as strategy. His gaze sharpened. You think this is enough to bring me down? I met his eyes directly. I know it is, I said. I tapped the table once. Checkmate. For the first time, the silence between us felt different. Not controlled. Heavy. He stood up slowly, closing the file completely. You've made a mistake, he said. I remained seated. No, I replied calmly. You made one. His jaw tightened slightly, but he didn't argue further. He turned and walked out without another word. I stayed there for a moment, letting the quiet settle, then stood up and picked up my phone. It's done, I said the moment Ethan answered. Send everything. There was no hesitation. Already in motion, he replied. Within minutes, calls started coming in. Notifications. Alerts. It's spreading fast, Lucas said over the line. Faster than expected. I walked toward the window, watching the city below. Good, I said. Let it spread. My phone buzzed again. Another update. Accounts are being reviewed, Ethan added. Regulators are stepping in. I allowed myself a slow breath. Then it's over, I said quietly. Not yet, he replied. But it's collapsing. I ended the call and stood there, steady, focused. This wasn't chaos. This was control. The calls came one after another. My father was the first. What have you done? His voice came out sharper than I had ever heard before. I didn't rush my reply. I finished what you started, I said calmly. You think this is a game? He snapped. I let out a quiet breath. No, I said. This is reality. He stayed silent for a moment, then spoke again, slower. Jason, what have you become? I looked at my reflection in the glass. It didn't feel unfamiliar anymore. What you created, I answered. That silence returned, heavier this time. We can fix this, he said finally, but the confidence was gone. I shook my head slightly. No, I replied. You can't fix something you built on lies. I ended the call before he could respond. The next call came from Ryan. I answered, already knowing what I'd hear. Jason, please? His voice broke halfway. I closed my eyes for a second, then opened them again. There's nothing to say, I told him. Everything is falling apart, he said quickly. Accounts are frozen. Deals are gone. I didn't react. That's what happens, I said, when the truth shows up. He let out a shaky breath. I didn't think it would end like this. I leaned slightly against the desk. You didn't think at all, I replied. He didn't argue. He couldn't. I ended the call quietly. I heard about my mother through Marcus. She's crying, he said softly. I didn't respond right away. She says she didn't know everything. I looked out at the city again. She knew enough, I said finally. What about you? He asked carefully. I stayed silent for a moment. It doesn't change anything, I replied. Marcus didn't push further. He understood. Later that day, Olivia came to see me. This time she didn't hesitate. She walked in like she had already accepted what she'd find. "It's over," she said quietly. I nodded once. "It is." She looked at me, her expression softer than I had ever seen it. "I regret everything," she whispered. I didn't look away. I didn't soften. I just held her gaze. "That's your punishment," I said. She flinched slightly but didn't argue. "You don't even hate me," she said after a moment. I shook my head slowly. "No," I replied. "I don't feel anything." That seemed to hurt her more than anything else I could have said. She stood there for a second longer, then turned and walked out without another word. The collapse didn't happen in one moment. It unfolded piece by piece. Deals canceled. Accounts locked. Names questioned. I watched it all from a distance, not rushing, not interfering. "You didn't attack them directly," Lucas said during one of our calls. I allowed myself a faint smile. "I didn't need to," I replied. "They destroyed themselves the moment they underestimated me." He was quiet for a second, then said, "You planned this perfectly." I shook my head slightly, even though he couldn't see it. "No," I said. "I learned." I ended the call and stood there, letting the silence settle around me. There was no anger left. No satisfaction either. Just clarity. This was never about revenge, I said quietly to myself. It was about control. I looked at the city lights again, steady and calm. "And now," I added under my breath, "it's mine." The gates opened without resistance this time. I didn't slow down as I walked inside. The same marble floors, the same high ceilings, the same silence, but everything felt different. "Back where it started," I said quietly. Emily walked beside me, her steps calm, her presence steady. "How does it feel?" she asked. I looked around, taking in every detail without rushing. "Not how I thought it would," I replied. She tilted her head slightly. "No satisfaction?" I shook my head. "No," I said. "Just quiet." She studied me for a second. "That's not a bad thing." I let out a slow breath. "It's not," I agreed. I stepped further into the hall, my reflection catching in the glass nearby. "I used to stand here and think this place meant everything," I said. Emily crossed her arms lightly. "And now?" I looked at her, then back at the empty space around me. "Now it's just a building," I replied. "What matters is what it took to get here." We walked through the rooms slowly, not out of hesitation but out of understanding. "You built this once," Emily said. I nodded. "I did," I replied. "Then I lost it." She glanced at me. "And now you have it back." I stopped near the large window, looking out at the view that once felt like power. "I didn't get it back," I said. "I rebuilt myself." She smiled faintly. "That sounds better." I turned slightly, leaning against the edge of the table. "They thought taking everything would break me," I added. "It almost did." Emily's voice softened. "But it didn't." I met her eyes. "No," I said. "It changed me." There was no sadness in my tone anymore. No anger either. Just truth. "That version of me, the one who trusted blindly, he's gone," I said. She nodded slowly. "Good," she replied. "He wouldn't survive in your world now." I almost smiled. "Exactly." I walked toward the center of the room, stopping where everything had fallen apart that night. "This is where it ended," I said quietly. Emily stood beside me, not interrupting. "And this is where it began again," I added. She looked at me carefully. "Do you ever think about them?" she asked. I didn't answer immediately. "Sometimes," I said. "Not the way I used to." She waited, letting me continue. "I don't feel anger," I said. "I don't feel anything toward them anymore." Emily's gaze softened. "That's rare," she said. I shrugged slightly. "Holding on to it would only slow me down," I replied. She gave a small nod. "So what do you feel?" I looked around one more time, then back at her. "Peace," I said simply. "Not happiness. Not victory. Just peace." She smiled faintly. "That's better than both." I moved toward the staircase, my steps steady, my mind clear. "You did it," Emily said quietly from behind me. I paused, then turned slightly. "No," I replied. "I became who I needed to be." She held my gaze for a moment, then nodded. "That's why you won," she said. I didn't argue, because I knew she was right. I walked up the stairs slowly, each step feeling lighter than the last. "You're not going to let anyone take this again," she added. I stopped halfway and looked back at her. "No," I said firmly. "Never again." My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The certainty was already there. I turned back and continued upward, my reflection appearing again in the glass along the wall. It didn't look unfamiliar anymore. It looked right. I forgive you, I said quietly, not to anyone in particular, but to everything that had happened. I paused for a second, then added, but I'll never forget. I reached the top and looked out over the space below, the same place where everything once collapsed. This isn't revenge, I said under my breath. This is rebirth. I let the silence settle around me, not empty but complete. And this time, I added, my voice steady, no one takes anything from me again.